We'll call the meeting to order. We'll ask Mr. Calvert to lead us in prayer and pledge.
Heavenly Father, as we come to you today, we're so thankful for all the many blessings that you bestow upon us. We're thankful that we come here and deliberate and make decisions that will benefit our students and our staff. Lord, we always ask that we'll turn to you and look to you for your guidance and your wisdom. And we just lift up those that are hurt, those that are sick, those that are dealing with loss of life, and we lift them all up. We ask all these things in your name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item D is adoption of the agenda, or any additional corrections to the agenda.
Move the adoption of the agenda as presented.
It's been moved and seconded. We adopt the agenda. Any discussion? Now proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. At this time, we'd like to welcome any visitors we have with us, and this will be a time for public comment if anyone had. I know we have a couple of students, and we'd like for them to stand up and introduce themselves and where they're from.
Cheyenne, Rocco, Bronson, high school, Michelle's class. I'm forced to be here. Fourth grade, so. Jamie.
Jamie?
Jamie.
Jim, same thing.
Jamie, same thing.
But it's
We're glad
nice.
you're here. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much for coming, and I hope you enjoy it, and I think it's a great opportunity that teachers sending students, so thank you very much, and let us
Thank you for
know.
having me.
Yeah.
There will be a test.
Oh, man.
What stage are we in with the Wilson Middle High School, the Wilson High School cell, the old Wilson High School cell?
Well, that's with the foundation, the Williston High School cell.
Yeah,
We're going to talk a little bit about it today, but we've got a contract on it.
I know that.
Okay. So I know February 10th is the day it goes hard,
Oh, okay.
or the money goes hard.
For the one that put down on stage view,
Yes, sir.
which is how much?
I want to say it's $25,000.
So you're holding your breath.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about it a little bit at the end of that.
At the meeting.
Yes.
Do we have any other public comment? All right. Moving on, Ms. Lake will come and present our operational audit.
Good morning. So operational audits occur every 3 to 5 years. Our last operational audit was 2013. So this audit encompassed 5 years, so it went up to 17, 18. So I think you've all been given a copy of that audit and had time to review it and those findings. Does anybody have any questions or any of those findings that you want me to go through? Sometimes the language from the Auditor General's office is hard to understand.
I know you kind of came in late, Ms. Reed, you feel confident and comfortable with everything, so.
Yes, the one thing about operational audit versus a financial audit is it looks at our procedures. So there are things that change in statute, there are policies, procedures that change along the way, and sometimes it takes us either a little while to catch up or what we were told by an auditor at the beginning of a project isn't what the auditor grades us on at the end of the project 5 years later.
Amen.
So this is always a way to learn and improve on your next life projects. And if anything, it's highlighted that we will get a project or need a project manager and we do chief learn to help us manage some of those functions.
Thank you, Ms. Lake.
I like the way you said, yeah, we just learn and improve, and that's what we're going to do and do better going forward and have all these things taken care of. Thank you.
I'll say this because I came over and sat with, most of the things that we're dealing with here are growth issues.
Mhm.
I mean, they're not our norms and they're new schools or new things that we put in place in the past few years that satisfied with the response from our district to the officer. Any other comments? Do you need that one? That's just.
No vote,
okay,
just-
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Is that a lot included in our agenda plan? I didn't see it.
Yeah, if it wasn't, we'll get you a copy of it.
Sounds pretty boring, but I just like to look
It's pretty good. Thank you. Our next item is out of E, Mr. Lott, and that'd be the administrative evaluation system.
Good morning.
One.
For the administrative evaluation system, first of all, this has not been updated since, I think, 2015, so it's due for an update. In talking with other districts, they do it a little different than what we were doing as far as determining the student growth portion. It's in your folder. It should look like, it should have performance of students at the top of it in your books. I'm sorry. So basically the way we have it now in our evaluation system is that it could be 10% for this particular test. It could be 10% for this test. In our middle high school combination schools, it could be 10 different indicators that we have to figure and then combine those things to come up with the 34%, which makes the student growth portion of an administrator's evaluation. It's very complicated, it's time consuming, and in the end, other districts, for example, they base it on the school grade, because the school grade doesn't contemplate all of the student growth that's happening at the school. I mean, it's based on the test scores and other things at the school which indicate student growth. And so we set out to try to simplify our system and more or less base it on the school grade. And so the 34% student growth, the red portion are the things that we're proposing to add. So, for example, if the school is an A, then that administrator would get a 4 as their score for the student growth. Now, it figures into a 3-year average to come up with the 34%. So it's not just 1 year, it's 3 years averaged together. And you can see the rest of the scores there. You may ask yourself, well, why is it different for a C and, and it's not the same for an A and a B, and the reason is because the C spread of points, the percentages that you have to get is much larger than that for an A or and a B. The B is very small. It's only a 7-point spread between a C and an A. So the B is only 7 points. The C, on the other hand, is 12 points. And so sort of to even it up, that's why we had put basically, if you were between 48 and 53% on the school grade, then you would get a 3.0. And if you were between 41% and 47%, you would get a 2.5.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Okay, is that, these calculations and 7 points between the C and A, is that done by the state of Florida?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
sir. Mhm.
Deal.
Yes,
I just want, and everybody within the state of Florida is under the same,
right.
So
That's the percentages to get an A is 62% or higher, a B is 54 to 61%, a C is 41 to 53, a D is 32 to 40. So there's, an 8-point spread there, and then an F is 31% or lower. So by doing this simplifies it, because we'll know right away what the administrator's student growth score is as soon as we get the school grade. Typically what has happened in the past is that the teachers, we have to figure this same kind of thing up for the teachers. We have to get all those test scores, we have to get those in, we have to come back later and do their evaluations. It's a lagging thing. This this would make it almost immediate. Once we have that school grade, we could go right away and go ahead and do those evaluations. And, you know, like it or not, we are evaluated based on those school grades. You know, we can get into a debate as whether or not that's a good idea or a bad idea, but the school grades are based on student growth, and it just makes it a much simpler, cleaner way of doing this.
Mr. Lott, you
Yes.
mentioned the 3-year average. What's the procedure if a person is either in year one or two? at their
We just use the data that's available.
Just for that.
So if it's a 1 year, it's just based on the first year. 2, we just take the 2 and divide it by 50%.
So they either wouldn't be benefited by their predecessor or penalized?
It's based on it's based on where they're at that year.
It does, you don't bring anything or leave anything with any past administrator.
Gotcha. So what about an administrator that leaves and goes from one school to the next? Do they start clean again also, or would they get?
Well, we've had that situation, and honestly, it depends on the length of time. But if it's a semester or more, I kind of leave that up to personnel. But basically, the guideline is if it's at least half the year, then it counts, and if it's not, it doesn't.
This calculation all within the school grade, would it kick in and be a part of the performance pay? Go.
Well, I'm actually working on the performance pay for administrators, along with our counselor and Ms. Lake and others. And, you know, the performance pay, from a standpoint, this itself would not, other than you have to get, for the performance pay, if you get, you know, an excellent evaluation along with an excellent school grade, then you get performance pay. So it'll be about half and half, I'd say, of the total for the performance pay. You have to have two things to get performance pay.
I know it's out of our control, but it really bothers me that such a high percentage on determining the school grade. It's because of state assessment. You know, how a kid does on some state tests, not how that kid does day-to-day class and life and those kind of things. I really don't. We can't control that, but I don't like it. Especially knowing kids in these classes that have accommodations in class, don't get them on state tests.
Right.
To me, it skews it.
Yeah. The 34% for student growth, as far as the evaluation process, is again, comes from DOE state. So,
Nothing you can do about that. But you never know what question.
What happens when, because I've had this happen a lot to me, when you have a substitute for like the whole semester, and the teacher was probably only there for like half of that semester, and then they left, and then we get another teacher, and then that teacher gets sick, or whatever the case may be, or whatever, we have another substitute, and then like, say they didn't plan out the rest of the year for their stuff or whatever, the kids are still being kind of like penalized, I guess, if you want to call it, because we don't have the teaching there. I don't know. I'm not a visual learner. I mean, I'm a visual learner. I gotta like see and people talk to me or whatever. So being on computer is kind of a little iffy. But you just say like it's a school grade, but as a school sometimes it's like penalized with, you know, other effects behind it. Like I said, with the teacher leaving there or something like that. Because like we had an instance with the biology, like when we had biology come up, the teacher had gotten sick, and then he had left, and then we had like a substitute for the rest of the year. That was.
I mean, I'm not really sure what your question is, but I mean, that's unfortunate. We certainly, it's not ideal, and it's certainly not what we would like.
Yeah.
We hire the teachers that are available to the best of our ability. But you know, you're right. There sometimes are. If you're saying that sometimes there are things out of our control that influence school grade, that's certainly the truth. I've had that happen myself as a principal.
Mr. Lott, this is for this year, it'll take effect this year, is that correct, for administrators only? And so it's based on the school grade, and then the evaluation will be done immediately after the school, so that will be effect this year.
Right. So the evaluation process is ongoing through the year as far as the 66%, the Danielson portion of this. and it's lagging, or it has been lagging in the past. As a matter of fact, I just recently did the evaluations for last year because I was waiting on the score. And so,
Right,
you know, to me, I'd rather give immediate feedback than
Right.
to have to wait half a year.
right.
And the same, you know, I would love it if we could get something similar to this for our teachers, because the same thing applies.
Right.
You know, we're giving evaluations this year for last year, and it's really not best practices in that regard.
Yeah, I agree, and I think I hear a lot of comments, you know, that they're lagging. So this will prevent, and we can get the evaluations done, or we're still gonna be waiting on that, waiting on something else?
If you guys approve this change, what has to happen next is I have to send it to DOE, and they have to approve it. But I can't do that until you guys approve it. And so, once they approve it, we already have the scores for the 2 previous years that we would average in with this year. So, pretty much at the end of the school year, as soon as we close down, I can go ahead and meet with those principals and do
But
their
you have to
best.
wait for school breaks.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, once we get the school breaks.
And school grades itself sometimes is lagging, some of the indicators in there.
Is this just for principals, not assistant principals?
It's for school-based administrators, so it's principals and assistant principals.
66% comes from school grade.
34% is student growth.
Well, I mean, so that's the school grade. What's the,
66%?
Florida School Leader Assist for Deliberate Practice?
Yeah, that's big, well, deliberate practice is an optional piece of this, but the Florida School Leaders Assessment is basically, in our case, we use a Danielson rubric, and there are 4 different areas that we evaluate our administrators on, and depending on how they rank in that rubric, they are assigned a score, and then that score is averaged in with the student growth, and together we get an evaluation rating from excellent all the way down to unsatisfactory.
Who ultimately decides whether a principal or an assistant principal are doing their job very well? Is it based strictly on this, or does the state have some input on it?
The district evaluates the principals, and the assistant principals are evaluated by the principals. This would be much easier for our principals as well, just so you know. I mean, because they have to evaluate and do the same process for our assistant principals. And, you know, sometimes assistant principals move around, and it'd be much easier for us to, the quicker we could do it, the better it would be for all involved, in my opinion.
Is this a state requirement that you do it this way, or some way you figure out within the parameters? how you do
The
it?
state does have some requirements. This certainly fits within the framework of the requirements. Again, we have to send this plan. Last time it was done, I think it was in 2015. We sent it to them. It took about 2 months for them to approve it, and then it came back. But
But you have to have some kind of evaluation system.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So much trickles down from the state, I figured it had to be.
It's definitely a requirement from the state, but they don't necessarily determine, for example, what is student growth. We can determine that. That's basically what we're trying to do today.
Any more questions or comments, Mr. Pop? Do you bring this in the form of recommendations or not?
I would ask for your approval of these changes, and then I will send them to DOE for approval.
Move we accept staff's recommendation for the administrative evaluation system.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Comment? Not proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Locke. Don't get forward. Item F. That's a district school board resolution for Chiefland Middle High School construction.
Yes, sir. We had originally put on the resolution in anticipation of having 2 things from DOE. Inside the front cover of your folder, you'll have an updated version of this document, the resolution. I had some numbers that I didn't have originally. You'll notice the 2 highlighted blanks. Those are the 2 areas that we were awaiting from Department of Education Special Facilities. So basically, They are reworking the last survey for Chiefland Middle High School. And that survey will determine basically what buildings will stay, what buildings won't go, and the total amount of money they would give us is the second blank there for a special facilities project at Chiefland Middle High School. This basically would then serve as our notice that we are applying for the special facilities funding. Since we did not get these two figures, we spoke with DOE. Mr. Edison called, and by the way, I wanted to acknowledge that our two guests here from Parrish McCall and CRA, which are working on this, Mr. Walsh and Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kelly and the people at CRA have been doing a lot of work on the survey, trying to work with DOE and get that done. Unfortunately, it wasn't done. So, but I did want to bring this to your attention as far as everything on this would be what we would turn in. These figures here came from our finance department. The only thing we would get from DOE are the two highlighted areas. So I didn't know if you had any questions on that part of it, but that's what it'll look like essentially once we get those figures, and we'll have to bring this back to the board at that time, the official resolution. Until then, we were concerned because there is a February 1st deadline for us to apply. This is what we were supposed to do, the resolution to do that. Again, they didn't have the numbers. Mr. Edison called them, so there's a plan B. And the plan B is this letter that we will send them. We will overnight it and be sure that it's there by Thursday, which basically says that we're requesting Special Facilities Construction Account Pre-Application Review Committee to be convened for the purpose of examining the critical need at Chiefland Middle High School. So basically, we're asking today from you permission to send this letter for the pre-application review by the Special Facilities Construction Committee up in Tallahassee. And we have crafted this letter, and it'll be signed by the board chair and the superintendent.
Basically what it does is there's a 90-day timeline for them to come in and get the spot survey, which is what we've been trying to get. There's been a lot of work that, especially Greg has been doing, trying to make sure that all of our facilities there qualify for replacement. And so that's been a big pull up here, is he's been working diligently with the facilities department over there to try to make sure that we qualify for replacement of all the buildings.
So do you want to give us any comment on that?
In the original Castali that was submitted, Building 1, the building out front, DOE rejected tearing it down. We have reapplied and appealed to them, and it looks like we may be getting Building 1 tore down now. So that's the big thing. So this will get your foot in the door. That's what we're after, make sure we don't miss any deadlines.
So, and he's done quite a bit of work for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Building one is the administration building?
No, sir,
Like classroom building, office building,
that's it.
That's it.
Building 1 does not have any restroom facilities. It has limited handicap access. There's a lot of things that we would have to do money-wise to really bring that up to current code. So we're asking for that building to be removed, and so we're having to justify that.
I was going to say, if I could add, since January 1, with all the turnover at DOE, we're having to jump through different hoops than we typically would. So it's a learning process for them as well as us right now.
That was going to be my question with the changing of the new air commissioner and retirement of people that were in charge of special facility, if that was part of our delays in trying to
Yeah,
get.
it's, right now we don't even know who to talk to.
Right.
This gentleman is who?
Mr. Kelly.
This is Greg Kelly from CRA Architects, who's helping design the Chiefland Middle High School project. I'll just give you some idea about
I hear these acronyms, I don't know.
So, just to give you some idea, this is the state requirements for educational facilities. This is front and back to give you some idea of all of the various things that we have to make sure we're doing correctly. We were on schedule to do that. This will work. Basically, as Mr. Kelly said, this will get our foot in the door, put us on the the list of facilities. I think that currently there are 4 facilities in Tallahassee that are already in the loop, so to speak. So we would like to join that and that group.
Mr. Lott, just for clarification, so we have 2 blank lines that you have highlighted. The total cost of cross-project estimated, the reason we can't estimate that is because we don't know, because of Department of Education, which buildings they will allow us to reconstruct.
Correct, and building 1 is really the issue at this point. If they, obviously if they take building 1 out of the equation, and that's going to have some change on the student stations that are allowable in the newer buildings. So really, that's the holdup is building 1.
And we've done a lot, and I don't know why some of these numbers were, but the original student stations we received for that school were a lot higher than what is now. Because as you know, special facilities only allows you to build what you have and not projections. So I know they've done a lot of work because the picture's changed a couple of times. But again, a lot of these things are going through surveys and getting things cleaned up, so you get the most accurate picture when you can for this one here.
But Mr. Vaught, we are going to get that letter in, and it'll be on time so that we won't miss a deadline.
As soon as we get through the work, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We'll be on this way.
We need a motion to authorize.
Yes,
And I make the motion to authorize the
Permission.
letter sent out.
Yeah, permission for a pre-application review by the special facilities.
Do I hear a second?
Yes, sir, I did.
It's probably moved and seconded. We submit the letter to be in Tallahassee by Thursday. Any other discussion?
Thank you for all your hard work, so we appreciate your help in this matter.
This is a pre-application, this is a committee in Tallahassee that reviews,
DOE special facilities.
okay, whether that would qualify you for this money, but it gets you started.
Gotta get on the list.
In terms of how many buildings get torn down and how many replaced, right?
Right.
It's a long process of steps, and the custodial report was the first part of that. And then, like you were saying, part of that's been changed and rejected because of a building, and they went back and appealed that. And then now you got the letter to get us to start the process, to get on the list to have the discussion.
And then at some point in February, you actually go up to Tallahassee,
We don't know the exact date of that yet.
and then you'll try to sell them on that, or try to get your rank.
But we have been speaking to them when we went up there. That was one of our priorities, and we did mention it. So we have started that process.
Yes, sir. Of course.
And Mr. Lott, thank you for reading that manual.
If there's no other discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Lott. Thank you all for your work. Okay. Item G was approval of the minutes of the December 11th and also the January 15th board meetings.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for approval. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. Item H, the consent agenda. We'll start on this end, Mr. Wilkins. Do you have any?
I have reviewed everything, and I do not have any questions. They have been answered previously. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Coward?
Item 2, always love to see teachers that have served our district well coming back and still being involved. And hopefully after this legislative session, if they are in drop, that they may not have to be out very long. If they'd like to stay employed, we can keep them employed. So, but appreciate that, and everything else.
Mr. Asbo?
Everything I had questions on already here.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson? I think mine have been answered. So with that, unless the superintendent or Mr. Delaney had any comments, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the consent agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. superintendent's comments and recommendations.
Okay. First off, just remind everybody, we have a workshop on Thursday, to review where we're at with some of the academic progress in our schools. I've been in, this comes back to Mr. Wood over here, been in, yes, so that starts at 9 a.m. But I've been in contact with Cookie King concerning our Wilson High School contract, and there's been a recommended change by the person in the contract, and what I would like to do is, for a good cause, have a, shall I say, as an emergency meeting, or what do you want to call it, Dr. Mr. London?
A meeting on
Yeah,
Thursday.
Thursday, it started at 8:30, and to review the Wilson High School contract, and make a recommendation to this king. So can we meet Thursday at 8:30?
This Thursday at 8:30.
Yes.
We're going to post that on the website.
That'll be an open meeting, right?
Absolutely.
So all of us open.
Yeah, the
Post a workshop in the meeting would be.
Both meetings, 8:30 and the 9 o'clock, will both be open. Correct?
Yes.
Would that need to be an action item or just?
We need more.
No, we don't need to vote on that today. We're doing everything we can to put it out in as many channels as possible, so the public knows that they can attend the meeting on Thursday.
Because
I have it on the website later today.
And the reason for this is that I believe February 10th was the hard date in the contract, and our next board meeting, I think, was on the web.
So,
If you
Mr.
want to make a
Terry,
decision, you have to do it before then.
if y'all could help us get the word out that on that, we're having this meeting on Thursday. What do you about that?
Is there a problem with the contract? That's what she was.
The folks that want to buy the property have a new recommendation.
That means that negative could be positive there. Good. Good. It always is with real estate contract, right?
You are wishful.
It could be
Way to
positive.
be,
Mr. Stewart?
It could be positive.
Yeah, I'm a glass half empty person.
Now we know.
Okay, also, I've got here, Angela's been, as you have indicated, and wanted to go to, and with the master board training. And Angela's been trying to check calendars and talking back and forth with Tina. And the tentative master board training on Friday, March 22nd. And I just need to confirm that with y'all, because I don't think she's heard from everybody.
22nd or 15th?
I thought I had 15.
It's the 15th, he can't do the 15th, so now.
It's about impossible.
Oh, we didn't send that back out.
Okay.
Can you do the 22nd?
The 22nd, okay.
Ashley, can you
Ashley,
do
I
the
can't do it.
22nd?
We need Ashley
Ashley's the
here.
reason we gotta have it.
We gotta have it.
That's
Yeah, we gotta have Ashley here.
Can't Skype.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
She said the 21st or
the
22nd.
21st, Thursday. Well, the 21st, I mean, my problem is I'm out of town, I'm at FAS. Now, I can probably cancel in my last day, that's the 21st. Yeah.
15th, you're at FAS. 21st, you have leave back.
March.
He couldn't do the 15th because he has FAS conference.
I can do the 21st. Thursday, the 21st.
That's why I'm on the 21st.
Okay.
And it will be all day.
So I'll cancel my thing on the 15th, or no, 15th.
I can't do the 15th.
Yeah.
I can't do
I know I have to be there, does everybody else have to be there?
How about the 29th?
I have to check that.
I'm doing
What is
this.
this?
It's our master.
Master board training,
Oh.
so, and because Mr. Turner rolled off, so instead of, it's normally a 3-day process, but because we only had one member that rolled off, we can do a 1-day renewal. So it's kind of a condensed version.
Is that done here?
Yes, sir. It will be here. Yes, sir.
I'm good on the 29th.
I'm good on 29th.
Everybody
Just an FYI, I'm trying to communicate this morning with Kim. February 5th is FASA, which is the Florida Association of School Administrators. They're having a legislative day next week, and I have some principals interested in participating in that. So I'm trying to work with Kim and our principals, a couple principals going up there. And, because it's always good to hear somebody else take the message to our folks and work on our legislative platform. So anyhow, I'm trying to set some of that stuff up for some of our principals to work on February 5th. So that'll be next week. So I don't know if they'll be overnight or not, so you might see a late overnight TDE come in. So I'm trying to work with John Nixon and make those happen.
Okay. I may be free on that day, so I may, just keep me in the loop.
Okay.
Run out there with them.
You're a legislative person, right?
We're all legislative people, so.
Well, I'm going to our designated person.
Okay.
So we're
Actually, I
probably,
think it was Mr. Edmund, so I don't know.
we're probably one of those requirements for you.
Get it done, so.
This is, and I know you know this, Celebrate Literacy Week. And I know this year we have instituted a superintendent's reading award to try to encourage kids to read. And I made a little video production that's been sent out. And I've been trying to get out and read to schools, and I know some of you are too, or have been. And again, I'll go to school and read anytime, it just doesn't have to be the day. But this is, certainly it's every day is a day that we should be reading. And so, it's always good. I like to get out there and talk to kids and what they're reading about and read to them and have those conversations, and I encourage them to do so as well. Okay, any comments from y'all?
I think it's a wonderful thing. So I saw it posted, I think maybe Cedar Key had shared it, so, and also I think the district Facebook had shared it, so appreciate you doing this. This is a wonderful thing, so.
So it's a very good thing. One last thing is, and it's going to be on our next agenda, and I've been talking with you about the strategic planning process, and I just want to share some plans that are out there from other school districts, and I want to have a little bit of conversation here in my comments, that on the next regular board meeting, it's going to be an agenda item for us to talk about this. So you can go online, you can go to different districts and review strategic plans. It doesn't have to be complicated. Some of them make them complicated, some of them make them real simple. I'm just going to share some of these with you. I got a bunch of extra copies here. But these are some things that we as an administrative team have been talking about. This is the one I think I've shared with you already from Osceola County. I'm going to start with this one here. And this is all the fun stuff. Now all the work is to be done. Okay? But these are the things I'm going to share with you what I think my vision is, and kind of what we need to do. And I'm going to use this, and I'm going to give you two others as another model. And you notice that they have 5 areas here. And the first thing you have to do, we as a board, is do we still agree to this? And the first conversation we have to have is about our mission statement. Is this still our mission statement, this mission of our board and our district, or not? If it is not, then we need to go back and replan and replow that ground. But if this is still something we believe, what we believe our school district should be aiming for, then this is what we need to go. This will be the guiding force behind the strategic plan. Does that make sense? Okay. And how I see this is, first off, there's going to be an academic success goal. There's going to be a talent management goal. Fiscal responsibility has got to be there. I would like to combine 4 and 5 on this, and then essentially have a 5th goal of safety. And what I would also like to see is that each one of the board members be on one of these goals. And so you participate in that process for one of these things. So you'll be a part of that working committee. And then as we come back, however it is quarterly or however we do this, to review where we're at, you're all part of the process. But each one of you are going to be on one of these goals in one of these working committees. Okay. This is, you can see this is a little bit bigger. I don't know if it's better, it's just different. And this is Santa Rosa County. And you can see it's just formatted a little bit different. But you can see their vision statement, their focus. They basically have, I think, 4 areas. And when you flip to this thing here and you look up the really right corner, they just say finance. But finance is one of their areas. And you can see, fleshes out different objectives. Human resources was one of their areas, and they flesh out different things. Student achievement and service. So that's how Santa Rosa does it. And the other one that I put here, because it's just a little simpler to look at, is Okaloosa. And this one was shared by one of our team members to look at it. And you can see where they have their vision and where to go. So you can see where they have a lot of definitions of different things up here, and then they have 4 priority areas. Okay? So we're going to start working on this. Our team will bring some recommendations to you, and we'll go from there.
I like the idea that we're all on a, one of the 5 points and strategies and, involved. I think that's great, what we can bring as a board together too. So I think that's terrific. And I like, visually, when you look at things, and I like the layout and the different colors and highlighting. I think we all learn that way.
So that's part of the things that we'll be working on. And that's it. Any other questions for him?
Very good.
I've asked this before, I'm sure I got it, that's what I'm looking for. Does this school district test for dyslexia?
I don't think we would go out and test for dyslexia. Dyslexia is a learning disability.
Right.
Okay, and when kids go through a process when they have a learning disability, there's a process, and that might be a learning disability that's identified through, and I don't know if it's a medical process or how that is, because I've never done that, but it is something that is diagnosed when they have kids that have problems that they go through, and it's just like when you go to the doctor and you have a sore throat, they have certain things that they check for. So when you have kids that have learning disabilities, and generally this is going to be a reading disability, and there's a process that they go through, and dyslexia might be where we get to. I don't know if it's a medical thing or not.
I got a lot of experience in it, if I can talk about that. As your child's going through school, you'll have IEP meetings and 504 plans. IEP, individual educational plans for children with learning disabilities, as well as a 504 plan, various levels of learning disabilities. And part of that process, we do offer occupational therapy and speech therapy, those kind of therapies. And part of that process, a child can go through testing through the school system for dyslexia. Now, the dyslexia screening that goes through the school system is not as elaborate as you would have in a private screening. I tell you this to tell you this. In the massive state of Florida, there's only 2 places that do the full-on dyslexia testing. Currently, there is a 3-year waiting period to get your child in there. My child was lucky enough to get tested because we live close to one of the testing facilities, Gainesville, Florida, and we were on the waiting list. A child was unable to show up. We got a call. If you can have your kid here in 10 minutes, we will test him. We got our kid to Gainesville, Florida in 10 minutes. My wife is an amazing driver. Okay. The test took 6 hours. It's very detailed. And it came through, yes, he's dyslexic. Now, here's the big rub on dyslexia. Dyslexia is not its own learning disability recognized by the state of Florida. It's part of a bunch of various disabilities through learning, but it's not its own. And the reason for that is the federal government does not provide any funding, does not recognize dyslexia as a disability. Okay, so yeah, holy smokes. You investigative journalists might want to look into this. It is one of the biggest misunderstood things in the world throughout the United States. There are states that do recognize it. They have private funding, not federal funding. One of the biggest is Texas, and one of the other ones is New York. The state of Florida is well behind those 2 home dyslexia services. It's just not out there.
I'll tell you a story about that. Years ago, Helen Ricketson was the county psychologist, and I sat down at lunch with her specifically to ask her a question about dyslexia. And I said, well, what's your view of dyslexia? And she says, you mean those stupid kids? And I said, you gotta be kidding me. You're the school psychologist and you think that it's stupidity? It's got nothing to do with intelligence.
Nothing, absolutely.
Einstein was dyslexic.
A lot of very accomplished scientists, businessmen, very famous multi-billionaires, change the world people are dyslexic. The problem is most dyslexic people, extremely intelligent. Dyslexia, there's various forms and various things that go on with dyslexia. Some of it has to do with numbers, some of it has to do with letters, and various things. It's very hard to diagnose. And because a person has dyslexia, the full-on dyslexia test is so straining on that person, a lot of times they can't finish it. You ever heard of a guy by the name of Richard Branson? Virgin Mobile, or the guy that's taking tourists to space, that guy, severely dyslexic, has to record everything. Now, tell you all this to tell you that. Something I'm going to talk about when it's my turn. You know, we've talked for a while now about going to the state, have accommodations on a state test. Kid with dyslexia's got it. You take a kid with dyslexia and throw this in front of him and say, take a test on that, he's going to come back dumb, and he's probably the smartest kid in your class. It's easy to diagnose when those kids aren't that smart. But a lot of times, because people don't understand it, they're considered, they have attention deficit disorder. You know, all of us armchair psychologists and armchair, intellectuals. Oh, well, that kid's just a bad kid. That kid's this. He doesn't want to pay attention. He doesn't. A lot of times misdiagnosed. And the average person can't afford to go have the dyslexia testing because it is very expensive. Very expensive. It's not covered by insurance. So that's the beauty of that. It's also such a long waiting list. And if you don't happen to live near Gainesville, Florida, or down around Miami, you're not going to get in on that quick hurry call like we were fortunate to do. Now the good thing about students in Levy County, there is a program if you have dyslexia testing at Shands Hospital. If your child receives free or reduced lunches at school, you take a letter where your child receives free or reduced lunches, the price of that testing drops from about $3,000 to $800. Still expensive, but drastically. Now the good thing about Levy County students, everybody's on free and reduced lunch. So, and we will gladly give that child a letter for that testing. But to get you in there, it's just trying. It's one of the most misdiagnosed things out there. A lot of famous people have it.
Ms. Hires out a comment.
And another great thing is Dr. Hall has provided extensive training to our reading coaches to help our teachers look at dyslexia and work with their reading program. In the past 2 years, she has had guest trainers come in and address this. So that's one great thing about our district. That has been going on for the last couple of years.
I mean, a lot of strides been made.
And understand, it's not a black and white issue.
No.
Everything, it's a spectrum of dyslexia.
It's hard.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of areas of it. It's crazy.
Well, the reason I asked you about that is you just talked about the importance of reading, having a reading award. And some kids are, I see why you did the state bill on accommodations for testing. But, I mean, there's a lot of kids that get left behind if they have some form of dyslexia. And the teachers don't know that that's the reason they can't read. So I always ask this, but it seems to me that maybe that's something the state legislature needs to look at, or the DOE wants to do. It's huge. If you have dyslexia, that's a problem.
To piggyback off that, I think Dr. Hall, she talked about it, and I forget the exact thing, but we have some readers that will help kids with that program, and maybe you can, there's a UIL, I believe, or something.
There's all kind of, it's one of those things. It's kind of like, we can all, there's certain things that we all know. For example, that's easy to compare to, that you can do it. Like if you have a lung disorder, we know you're going to need oxygen. Fairly cut and dry. When it comes to dyslexia, there are a myriad of things. that may help a dyslexic child. They're all available, and we make them available here. Some of it's as simple as little clear plastic, not clear, but plastic sheets that go over it in various colors. And depending on the kind of dyslexia you have, you may need a green sheet, you may need a red sheet, you may need a blue sheet. And it goes over it, it's just a clear cellophane piece of paper. And somehow that triggers something in their dyslexic brains that will settle that down. Some kids, it's off the chart and can't do that. And they have, now we have technology where it reads to the person. And they can run their finger over it, or they take their mouse and just got a read to technology. There's a term for it. There's speak to technology to help these kids. And we're constantly trying in Lee County to help these kids with it. And it's really an amazing thing. And what's really cool, and I'll tell this to anybody who wants to listen to this, if you want to have a moment in your life where you watch a 50-year-old grown man cry, okay? You can be that person. You see a kid that's never been able to read a book and wants to desperately finish that book, finish a book for the first time in their life. That's an amazing thing. And we got that going on because our people are, the state of Florida's not going, hey, we're going to do this, because they don't recognize it. Our people are on their own going, this child obviously has a reading difficulty. I'm going to work with this child at their own time. That goes out to praise of all our employees and those kind of things. And Dr. Hall's work and all that, we're seeing it. It's just convinced the state that this thing exists in this problem. They know it exists, they just don't know what to do with it.
Well, they should do something.
Ms. Hires, yes.
The term he's looking for, I think, is universal design for learning.
That's
it,
UDL, yeah. UDL, yeah.
EL, Terry, one of those.
Those acronyms will kill you.
All right.
I have one more question for Mr. Edison. Mr. Edison, we had a very informative workshop in December, on IEPs and really what was happening, and I think it was a very thick manual. We didn't quite get through. It was very informative, and we went over a lot of things, but I feel like I didn't quite, get an answer on things that we can do with discipline and safety, with students with these accommodations or special needs, so that we can have all kids safe in our classrooms. So I really want to pursue that a little more, and how can we go about and do that?
All right, any other questions of the superintendent?
I agree, Paige, with that workshop. I would like to have a follow-up workshop to that workshop.
It was a great workshop, but we didn't have an answer.
plan.
And I know it's not always an answer or black and white, but I like a plan and a process, and,
Yeah.
All right.
We like a workshop.
Any other questions, superintendent? No, we'll start with board comments. We're going to let Ms. Kaminsky start today.
Okay, as we've said, it's Literacy Week. I'm going to Yankee Town tomorrow. I think all of our schools, have done a good job of, just kidding, have done a good job of putting it out on social media about Literacy Week. And like we said, not only is it important to have kids read every night, it's also, depending on the age, important to read to them every night. So it's a big, important week, and that's it. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Adams.
Let's see. I did bring a copy, and this is no knock against Mr. Witt, of the Chiefland Citizen. I want to say thank you to them for this being their headline last week about the Lincoln County School District driving force behind proposed. Did you get it? Which is a great article and brings attention to it. That's one of the big things we need attention to this bill, because we're going to see some changes coming, just about what you were asking about just a minute ago. So thank you for asking the right question. Appreciate that. The other thing, yes, ma'am?
I just want to say I was a high school teacher for 15 years. So when I come to these meetings, I see things through an educator's eyes as well.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then, okay. You acting like, not him. Would y'all like to tell us what all good things are happening in Bronson? Putting y'all on the spot? That man behind you's working on it. So you better put pressure on him. He's told me he's getting it. How's that?
And I have a 5-year-old daughter. She goes to elementary school over there. And when you were talking about reading, I'm so excited. She read her first book last week, And it was a Dr. Seuss book, Mr. Brown, but she read it by herself and everything like that, and it was just like, it was really exciting and stuff, and I take time and read with her and stuff like that every night, and it's really a work in progress, and her best friend is like, not like as up there with her, so like, I get like 2 different viewpoints, and I mean, I work with her best friend too, and she's starting to get there, you know, I gotta help her with a couple words, but she's slowly progressing too, and I mean, I don't remember reading a book in kindergarten, but hey, it's okay, but it's a work in progress, and Bronson's actually doing a lot better sports-wise too, so we're coming back, we're getting there.
All right. I about failed kindergarten because I couldn't color. Long story, I'll tell it to you later. Floor coming along?
Thank you.
It's coming, isn't it?
It's coming.
That's all I got. Just bear with me.
I'm waiting.
First thing is the galas, February 9th, so it'll be at Williston, so look forward to seeing everybody there, and just appreciate all the hard work that goes into making that happen, so from the maintenance to the foundation members to the cooks, so, and Mr. Etheridge is going to provide us a great prime rib, so
It turns out.
I know it will.
It
So
will.
He never disappoints. So.
Shorts and flip-flops, right?
It is black and white because it's the 30th anniversary of the foundation. So if you feel led to be in something
Black shirt.
tails, you know, make sure it's a black. So
With the top
tux,
hat.
with top hat. So,
Not bad.
or you know, I'm sure we'll let you in if you come in with the tuxedo shirt or so that. I mean, but I'm just kidding. So, but that foundation does a lot of good works throughout the county. So, and this obviously is the kind of the major fundraising deal. So, and we'll continue to be sponsors of it. So I'll be hitting you up later for your check. So, obviously it is Literacy Week. Never leave home without it. So, fortunate enough, many, many moons ago, my 3rd grade teacher gave this to me as a graduation gift. And that lady is now the principal at Bronson Middle High School. So and it has a special place in my heart because I can remember, I can close my eyes to this day and I tell the story every time I go into a class to read. I can close my eyes and I can picture the big brown couch that 2 lucky people got to sit on either side of her and kind of help turn the page as she read Where the Red Fern Grows, or you sat in front of her, and to this day I can hear her voice reading that book to us and the importance of what that means to me. So and then, so that's the great thing about literacy, that it can take you to a place far, far away and be something. So, and now to some of the nitty gritty. I want to go over a couple of legislative things that are coming up. And maybe, I guess this really is a question for the superintendent. I know Sheriff Galtieri called out school districts, and I'd just like for us to be on the record stating that, letting everybody know where Levy County is in the process and how hard that we've been working to keep our children safe, and how from day one, I would say going back to, I believe it was last March, that we had an SRO or somebody at every school, and that we do take this very seriously, and Levy County is not dragging their feet, that we are being proactive, and we are out there doing everything that we can within our power, even to the point where we're spending general fund dollars that should be classroom dollars, because the funds did not go far enough to provide the safety and security of our students. I know it's one of our platforms. I know that the Florida sheriffs may talk about instituting, going back to a $500,000 that would be tied to safety and security. And I hope that we as a board would support that, knowing that there are definite deficiencies in the funding that was provided for safety and security.
And I just want to piggyback on something you said. In the school board of Levy County and our sheriff's department, our school resource officers, we've had a fairly aggressive plan in place for many years. And some of these things that are new to a lot of these schools are not new to Levy County because we've been doing them. Now, the frequency of some things and stuff like that might be true, but the recommendations, you know, that's come out of a lot of these things, we've been doing. So it's not like, a lot of school districts that haven't. We've taken our security of our schools and our children safe from day one. And a lot of these reports that they come out, we hear, they call it the FSAT, FSSAT. Well, that's what we've been doing for all these years. It's been the O'Connor report that's brought to you, and the board that you approve each year. And that's been happening for 10 or 12 years. And so it's nothing new to this board and to this school system. Now, I can't sit here and I don't answer for what other school districts do. Now, the requirement for the school resource officers in every school, that's new. But we've always had 6, and so it's, I can sit here and say that, it's always been our front burner. It's never been on the back burner of Levy County. And a lot of the proactive things that they've talked about, we've already done before it even became a recommendation. So.
And then, so I appreciate all of the efforts of the staff, and appreciate the cooperation we've had with the county commission and the sheriff, to get these things done. Yes, sir.
Just for clarification, you said something I didn't know about. Not that I'm trying to pick things apart, but you said, and we even would use classroom dollars for schools.
Well, general fund dollars that would be allocated to go to classroom, yes, sir,
So
obviously, every dollar that's general fund, we wanted to go to help our students and to be there instead of having to be spent on.
Part of our legislative platform is to fully fund the bill, 7026, because we did get an allocation directed that was to go to the sheriff's department. That allocation did not cover the full cost. Okay, now I know the county commissioner, the budget for the sheriff's department went up to the county commissioner's office, county commissioners, but also we had to put in some more, and that's just, it's part of it, and that's.
We valued it, so we did that, but I'm saying, these are dollars that could be spent other places, so, other than safety and security.
To make sure your point was, is we had a legislator who called out school districts and said we were not putting value on the safety of the school out.
It was the chief, so it's the sheriff of Pinellas County, so for the Miami-Dade, Stoneman Douglas Commission. So he took a big broad brush and painted every 67 districts saying we weren't doing what we're supposed to do. And I wanted to do a record that Levy County is.
Well, that's when there was discussion about this, that you were really conflicted about how much money you should allocate, how much money you could allocate. And it sounds like, really, the philosophy of the school board has always been focused on classrooms and providing good education, but it really
it goes hand in hand, Mr. Terry, but obviously that any dollar that you have to circumvent, what if it's the difference between having to hire a teacher or, put that money towards, SROs or whatever it may be. So, the idea is that we want to be good stewards of our money, and not saying that safety is not, because it is. And that's why I'm saying that we went above and beyond. And Levy County, that's why it's written right there, safe environment. So, but at any point in time, I give you a mandate that says, you've got to pay, $100 towards a gas bill, but Social Security only gives you 75 or whatever, but it's mandated that you pay $100. Or it's going to come out of your savings or something, right? So, or maybe it means you can't go to the gathering table one day less. So, so things like that. So, and that's all. That's what I was saying. So, and I just wanted to make sure that it's on record that Levy County is doing everything we can for the safety and security of our students, that we are not lumped in. And I wish that Sheriff Galtieri would just call out the people, the districts that aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, instead of just taking a broad brush and saying, all you districts are doing, dragging your feet. So.
I think this mass killing in South Florida really caught everybody off guard. You had to change your whole way of thinking about how much money you're going to allocate for this type of thing.
No doubt, no doubt. The last two things I wanted you to know about is that there's a bill with to create a homestead exemption for anyone 65 years or older, filed in the Senate, that would make them exempt from paying school taxes.
Ooh.
So if they have maintained 25 years residency, so
25 years?
25 years, yes, sir. So it's just come out, so just been filed last week.
Who's sponsored?
That would be the chairman of the Education Committee, for the Senate, Manny Diaz, who is employed by charter school academia, so. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You haven't looked at how much that's gonna cost you?
Oh, in the state of Florida, with the retiree population we have, would be detrimental
Yes,
to
it
public
would.
education.
And the last thing I want to do is, even though it was mandated that you be here for Ms. Sherry Schuler's class, we appreciate you being here, so.
Oh, I appreciate y'all having me. I mean, like I said, I'm being forced to be here, but I really do enjoy it. It kind of opens my eyes up to certain things and what goes on and stuff like that. I mean,
Mr. Edison, I know that you mentioned about us maybe having like a student advisory panel or whatnot. I'd really love for us to explore, possibly, if nothing more than maybe rotating through a senior from each high school coming to our board meetings or something like that, to get their viewpoint and hear what they're seeing at their school site, and basically give them an opportunity to share with us the positive and the negative, where we can do better, because we want to strive to be better each day. So keep up the good work, both of you.
Question?
Mr. Calvin?
Yes, ma'am.
If you want to send something to that sheriff who did the broad stroke of inaccuracy, I did a story, front page story, posted on Illinois8.com. It's the county in final stages of permanent school resource deputy placement, which showed how the interagencies work together to find the funds to make that happen and how it was implemented on the first day. So if you want to grab that link and send it to him to show that that's not the case here.
Okay.
It's all spelled out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Ms. Brooks?
I'm just excited about it, the board going to Chiefland schools today, and thank you very much. And real quick, Ms. Hires, how are we coming on the substitute process and starting? And I'm asking because I've had a lot of comments directed to me, and people, their interest and kind of their feedback. So where are we and what's happening with that?
We have a definite timeline, and our two departments are working together, and we are reviewing applications this week. We will start the interview process by Friday, and work through that next week. We have a definite, my department met yesterday. We have a timeline as to how this is going to roll out. We've already contacted Frontline for training. He has reached out to me. We're setting up dates as we speak. So, we are moving right along.
That's great, and that's wonderful, and I just want to always get that positive word out and things that we are doing, to be ahead of the game on that, and with our substitutes. I didn't ask a question, but do you, or maybe you don't know yet, but do you have in mind what schools we're going to start with?
We're not actually going to put that out there yet,
Okay.
until we have a couple things.
Okay, certainly. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks. Mine's fairly short. It's Literacy Week, and we can always find a way to reward our students in Williston, and we're going to do that Friday with about $200 worth of pizza for the kids who've done well. So I appreciate our staff looking for ways to incentivize. Sometimes in the past, we always do it from a negative standpoint, and I think there's been a turn in that process when we're trying to reward for good things, and so I appreciate that.
You use the grade point, is that how you-
We're not like hanging pizza down the hallway for them to, for their grade or anything, but I can read you what Ms. Chris said. But basically what it is they serve so many points, or they've made certain gains, and then they're going to get to attend the pizza party Friday afternoon.
Again, just to go off on that, the hardest thing that we can do, because teachers work, principals work very hard. And the hardest thing to do is to get 5,400 kids to do the very best that they can on one day. That's the hard thing. And so they work very hard, and I'm sure that you're going to hear some different things on incentives, because the kids got to want to do it. And so that is the challenge, because we know that standards are taught. We know the kids know the standards, but to show that they know the standards is a different issue.
just made brief notes a while ago. It's, you know, strategic planning, as you go up, you know, other boards and things, we learned a long time ago through leadership and FFA or football. The easiest way to success is to set a goal, long-term goal, and short-term goals and work towards it. But as a board member, still fairly young, I guess we set a goal several years ago on graduation rates, put graduating coaches in schools and look at the results were positive. So I'm excited about a strategic plan, and I'm excited about a simple strategic plan because I've seen some that get so comprehensive that you can't even see development. So the simplicity and the ideas in 5 areas, and then a board member, I will say like this, being responsible for one of those areas, I think we'll see growth and something that'll help us push forward. We had a tragedy in Williston last week. An elementary school student asked to keep those family members and students in prayer. I don't know how to describe it. Their school administrators and students, and of course the parents and all. They're alone in the process. I'm asking for community prayers. Mr. Breezy, I appreciate you. We got the scoreboard, softball field. Anytime we have motivated boosters who help raise money to move forward, and our staff comes together to help. It always, when I see parents smiling around a softball field, it's always a good thing. With that, right? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes. With that, I think that wraps up my comments. Is there any other business to come before the board? We have executive session. We will be attending Chiefland Schools today.
We want to meet at Chiefland High School.
Being at Chiefland High School for a Chiefland tour, and then anybody would like to come, I think we're going to be dining.
That's right.
Dining to the south end of Chiefland. Any other business to be transacted? Motion to adjourn.